One of the more interesting observations pertaining to Ghostbusters Frozen Empire was that of those who saw the movie, the ones who reported enjoying it the most were older audiences who grew up with the Ghostbusters, while the ones who enjoyed it the absolute least were the younger audiences, the very same ones that Hollywood are desperate to reach. As we are about to see, that has some far-reaching wider implications that go way beyond the Ghostbusters, and Hollywood should be very concerned about it. Box office-wise, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire opened in the same range as its immediate predecessor, Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is fine. That means that if Sony wants to continue making these movies, all they have to do is scale the budget back to where it was with Afterlife and they have a sustainable franchise on their hands. They do have to scale it back though, because Frozen Empire cost more, and it did that because the powers that be assumed that with the inclusion of the younger characters, they would have expanded the audience by now, by way of younger audiences who didn't grow up with the originals, but who see themselves in the younger characters and become fans of them. Alas, these box office figures, as well as the audience reviews broken down by age group, clearly demonstrate that that hasn't happened. On the contrary, the core Ghostbusters audience hasn't changed, and these movies probably would have done exactly the same without the younger characters at all, as it is the original fans that are still keeping the franchise alive. Now, of course there's gonna be some younger converts here and there, but on the whole, in the bigger scheme of things, younger audiences don't care about the Ghostbusters. But of course, that's just one brand affecting one studio. The bigger issue here is that on the whole, younger audiences aren't into any other properties from the 80s or thereabouts either. This was confirmed in a recent study, which will no doubt cause shockwaves in Hollywood, although to be honest, no one should be surprised by the findings. There's a number of write-ups on this study, but let's do the one from IndieWire, for no other reason than that it was the first I found. The headline kind of gives it away. Millennials and Gen Z want original movies and TV, not remakes, new streaming survey says. IndieWire writes, when Barbie, Oppenheimer, and even Sound of Freedom were cleaning up at the box office last summer, we were not alone in declaring that when it comes to the types of movies young audiences will go out to a theater to see, Hollywood needs to chase originality to find the next hit. The latest Marvel, Indiana Jones, Transformers, Jurassic World, and more all underwhelmed, while Super Mario Bros., Five Nights at Freddy's, even when a fresh start on a previous IP, and now even Poor Things outperformed expectations. It turns out young people want these same qualities in their streaming services too. A new Streaming Insight survey conducted by free streaming platform Tubi found that 74% of Millennials and Gen Zers prefer to watch original content rather than franchises or remakes. Viewers are increasingly seeking fresh and innovative ideas that push the boundaries of what's possible instead of rehashed versions of existing stories. A white paper made available to marketers and obtained by IndieWire reads. Again, this honestly shouldn't be that surprising, although to Hollywood it's going to come as a shock. Obviously, original movies are released each and every week. But the high-profile ones, the tentpoles that the studios gamble everything on and plan their entire yearly release slate around, tend to be branded properties. And in order to minimize risk, that brand will be a familiar one. But familiar to whom? Therein lies the problem. The green-lighting producers, the ones who decides which productions gets the go-ahead and which doesn't, tend to be in their 30s and 40s, sometimes early 50s, seldom older and seldom younger. What that means is that a great many of them grew up in the 80s, the younger ones in the 90s, and in order to further their own careers by way of reducing risk, they have a penchant for greenlighting rehashes of properties which were popular in their time and their youth. Properties that were massively popular in what to them, at first recollection, seems like yesterday. Only it wasn't yesterday, even if, depending on your age, it might seem like it upon first recollection. So let's put this into some perspective. Remember the year 2001 and a certain day in it, which as it turns out is demonetizable on YouTube. Depending on your age, yeah, of course you do. If you're the age of an average greenlighting producer, you know exactly what you did that day, and it seems like it happened only yesterday. But it wasn't yesterday. In fact, it's far longer ago than you may think. We are now as far away in time from 2001 as 2001 was from 1978. Let's illustrate the issue even further. Greenlighting producers remember the Neverending story. It was a massive hit in 1984. That's why they're remaking it. But here's the thing. We are now as far removed in time from 1984 as 1984 was from 1944. Have you ever heard about National Velvet? That was a popular family movie from 1944, which means that it is the same distance in time away from the original Neverending story as we are from the Neverending story today. So imagine if, in 1984, the producers that made the Neverending story had decided, let's not risk this. Let's do a remake of National Velvet instead, because I have nostalgia for that one. It doesn't feel that old. I'm sure kids today are gonna love a new take on something I have nostalgia for. Sounds insane, right? Well, that is pretty much what is going on whenever a producer today decides to remake something like the Neverending story. What original story that could have been a modern-day classic won't get made now because some asshole greenlighting producer decided to play it safe and rehash what they grew up with and force that upon a new generation? Because they are. Never mind the Neverending story. Other upcoming rehashes include The Chronicles of Narnia, Wolfman, Blade, The Fantastic Four, Superman, Twisters, The Naked Gun, Final Destination, Cliffhanger, Highlander, Police Academy, The Birds, The Toxic Avenger, Escape from New York, The Crow, and a metric shit-ton of others. Don't get me wrong, there have always been rehashes and the like, and that is good and well. I mean, some of the most classic of movies are themselves remakes. But there comes a point where you've gone too far, when the next generation are denied their own things because an older generation of producers keeps on rehashing theirs. And that is what Hollywood is doing here. That alone isn't the cause for the cultural stagnation that has been plaguing society these past 2 decades. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do a separate editorial on that, by the way. But it is a part of the problem. Arguably, the last generation that had their own thing growing up, and then I mean this massive thing that everyone knew and could bond around and over, not just some subculture, are the ones that grew up with Harry Potter. Now, how long has it been since that first came out? The data here is irrefutable. To younger audiences, most of these properties that Hollywood is bringing back in order to play it safe are their dad's properties, or even their granddad's properties. That's awesome for dads and granddads, but clearly, the younger audiences on the whole are no more into that than what you were of your granddad's favorite pastimes. In a time where Hollywood is rapidly contracting, the powers that be needs to take this data on board, and fast. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments.